Hello and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe if you're into what I'm doing. I'll make sure to remind you later, just in case you're like, well, let's see if it's worth it first. Hopefully it is. We'll see. It's been a while since I've done a Planeswalker review here. To be honest, most of them have been not interesting enough for me to really want to spend a lot of time on them, but I have an idea for reviewing a bunch of them at a time, so you can at least get some idea of how I feel about these walkers. But this one here I think is worth talking about because, for one, we already have a Grist, and she might be the best Planeswalker in the game, so having a second one come out only less than a year after the first one made such an impact on the game. You guys are probably curious about how good this one actually is. So why not focus on this one with the time I've set aside? Without further ado, let's dive into our stats. Alright, well, right away, the 92 life total is a big bummer. To be honest, I think that this Planeswalker would be a lot better if they had a lot more hit points. And I don't know what's the point of making the hit points so fluctuating all the time. I think they should just standardize all Planeswalkers and just give them all the same hit points. Give them all 130 HP or whatever. Maybe not even that high. Maybe 110 is fine. But this whole thing about just arbitrarily deciding how much hit points a Planeswalker gets, I don't really get it. So we end up with Planeswalkers like this where they're such a low life total that it's hard to really rely on them for anything. It's so easy to end up in really bad situations really easily, and it makes it that much easier to get one-shotted by things too. So below, I don't know, at this point, below 105 hit points is just like, it's just unacceptable at this point compared to the Planeswalkers who's, especially with the way that the hit points have been creeping up in average total amount. So this fluctuation between these super high hit point and super low ones just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, that's my rant on that. We could talk about the mana bonuses. These are pretty interesting though. You get +6 on green and black, making her the highest mana bonuses on color matches, I think, of any dual color Planeswalker, actually. This means you get negative bonuses on every other color, which is cool. It's a little weird. You could definitely fall behind, but at least she's got green with one of the big bonuses, which is pretty easy color to make a lot of green gems on the board with. Not a lot of effort. Definitely lean into that if you play her. You could, try and put some black gem converters into your deck too, but if you have green available to you, might as well just go for that. It's just easier and cheaper to do. It hasn't been that big of a deal that the other colors are so low. Grist 1's mana bonuses overall are better because even though it's flatter overall, you could easily make sure that you get enough mana because there's no negatives. So high risk, high reward, I guess you could call this mana bonus spread. But I don't hate it. If you had any less of a mana bonus on black and green, that would really knock her down even further. And then deck limits. So I was hoping that maybe here would be where you get a little bit more in the flexibility department, but they only give us 5 spells and they only give us 5 supports. That's pretty much the bare minimum here of what you would want to run. Makes it so that you can't do certain types of decks, but if you're going for more well-balanced deck types, then this spread, I guess, is fine. 9 creatures, you'll just never play that many, I guess. So it's really all about how many spells and supports you can get into a deck. You probably don't ever need more than 5 or 6. So unless you're just mastering stuff, but I don't think you would want to master stuff with this Planeswalker just because their life totals are so low. So you're going to constantly be having to use potions to get back to full life, which is not very high. So that's another thing I don't like about the hit points. Ability 1, Swarm of Vermins, 4 loyalty, very cheap. You may destroy target non-token creature you control. If you do, create a Golgari insect token, then convert 3 gems to loyalty gems. I forgot to write that it gets reinforced 3 times, so you end up with basically a 4/4 Golgari insect token for destroying one of your creatures, then convert 3 gems to loyalty gems. So I guess this is a fine way to ramp to your third ability. It's going to help with that because you're converting to loyalty gems. But you want to do it to a creature that you want to sacrifice for specific reasons. And there are a handful of creatures that benefit you if you destroy them. So that's my first instinct on what to do with this ability. I think it's really meant to synergize with the creatures that have restore on them, because that creates those activated gems that benefit your creatures. But you got to make sure you have other creatures around to want to do this with. So it's an ability you can somewhat build around, but you just got to make sure it's worth it for you to do so. Mouths of Subsistence, ability 2, 8 loyalty. Another pretty cheap ability. Destroy the top 4 cards of your library. Return the first creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Destroy an opposing non-token support at random. This can affect vanguards. So the thing about this ability, it's like kind of a mishmash of Grist 1's first and second ability, but a way worse version of it. Destroying the top 4 cards of your library is alright, depending on what you have in your deck. Return the first creature card from your graveyard to your hand without getting any mana for it. A lot of the times I would rather just leave it in the graveyard and bring it out in a way that gives me full mana to do so. So that's how I would much rather use this ability if I could. And then destroying an opposing non-token support at random is just a worse version of Grist 1's second ability that can destroy 3 non-token supports and puts a 6/6 Golgari token stack into play. So it's fine for the amount of loyalty you have to spend on it. It's just overall a kind of average ability. The destroying the non-token support is nice, but I found myself constantly comparing this Planeswalker to the first Grist, because why wouldn't you? But it's also just because that one is so good. I feel like you really have to build a whole different type of Planeswalker so that these don't overlap, and then therefore this one is outshined by its predecessor. The Ultimate Leech, ability 3, 18 loyalty. This is an ability I like. Destroy the top 10 cards of your library, so there's a lot that you can do with that. Your opponent loses X life, gain X mana. X is the number of cards in your graveyard up to 50. This is one that you probably should build around. Just being able to put a ton of cards into your graveyard and then benefiting from that. The mana gain is going to be the biggest benefit. The opponent life loss is good too, but there may be times where using this ability will win you the game, but will also maybe keep you from hitting all of your objectives by winning too quickly. So you gotta be careful there. But other than that, it's a pretty solid ability. I usually don't get 50 mana from it, but it's not that hard to build for. So I'm usually getting like 15 to 20, 25 on average, unless I'm really building for my graveyard. But yeah, this is a pretty decent ability. I actually do like this one. I think it's the best thing that this Grist has going for it. So this is the one that I would most build for, because I think between this and her mana gains, those would be her biggest strengths. Speaking of, let's get into pros and cons. So her pros are pretty straightforward. Highest gains on black and green of any dual color walker. Cheap ability costs. At least, yeah, I would say so. Yeah, all around for what you get out of them, they're reasonably costed. And then potential to gain tons of mana for a third ability. That's what I just discussed here. So there you have it. And now the cons. Terribly low life total. I mean, that's really the thing that's holding her back from being a better Planeswalker. I would probably rate her higher if she didn't have this low of a life total, because it just makes her unreliable. Negative mana bonuses on off-color matches. And then her first and second abilities just pale in comparison to Grist 1. They're just kind of these weaker versions of what you get with the other Grist. So it's not that the abilities are awful or anything, but you're just always going to compare it to that one, and it's just going to seem that much worse by comparison. Now that I explained the nuts and bolts of her, let me show you some decks that I've created that I think you will enjoy. Okay, so this deck, I was trying really hard to create a deck that was mostly non-meta cards and was still viable. I didn't want to just go with the typical decks that you see everyone running with the other Grist. And I wanted to make sure that it was a strong deck when I used it. So it's gotten to the point where it's really hard to lose with this deck, to be honest. There are a lot of cool things going on with it. It doesn't look like it would have a ton of good synergy, but it actually works quite well. Mostly because every card here is pretty useful just on its own, and it just gets better and better the more pieces you have on board. So it's gone through a ton of different iterations, and this turned out to be one of the strongest versions of it. Because the thing I like to do when I'm trying to work out a new deck idea is I just run it a ton of times and just work at it until I patch up all the holes that it might have in it. So all these cards were chosen carefully, and they just come together in a really nice way. Chalk Outline is good for getting most threats off the board, even though it's only one at a time. So that's good for non-creature based things to get rid of. Wail of the Forgotten is a card that I'm surprised we don't see used more often. It's one of the best removal cards because of its unique way that it does so. Return target creature to the bottom of its owner's library. So that's really hard to get out into play again. There's not a lot of cards or abilities that will just take that creature from your bottom of your library and put it right back into play. Whereas if you destroy a creature, it's very likely that your opponent has a way to bring it back, especially if you're going against a Grist. So with this card, as long as you're able to target them, you can really get rid of them for good, at least for a while, unless they have like fetch from library cards. There's a lot less of those cards, I think, than there are ones that bring creatures from the graveyard back into play. Don't even worry about the Descend. Nobody ever uses that. Wail of the Forgotten. Very underrated card. Scales of Shale. This will help to mainly make sure that your creatures are not as easily destroyed, because you get the shield counter 1. And then you could throw this on, your bat creatures that you create with Aclazotz and make them lifelinkers. And eventually they'll keep growing and growing, but you want some lifelink in your deck because of her low life total. You have to mitigate some of that disadvantage you have going into the game right away. So there's a little bit that you have to build for with this Grist. But Oil Deep Gearhulk is a card I really like. I'm sure if you own it, you really like it too, because it's such a devastating card. It's only 10 mana, and it's a 4/4 with lifelink and ward, but really it's basically an infinite obliteration when it enters the battlefield. So it's a great way to disrupt your opponent's hand. Same thing with Aclazotz. You're going to be discarding 2 cards every turn when you attack with it. Cryptics. Kishla Village is good. At the beginning of your turn, convert 4 gems to green. So that's a good way of boosting up your likelihood of making an on-color match. Threats undetected for those creatures that you might need to put back into your hand, giving them some mana. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, is going to be one of our main ways of generating mana in this deck here. All you need is a Selvala with some other cards in play, one of your other creatures, just keep building them up. Then you'll be converting more and more as you go. So Kishla Village and Selvala do pretty well, along with Cryptics. And then Crest for the Necropolis is a really good card. Landfall, corrupt 3 gems, and pick one of the first 4 cards from your graveyard. Fetch that card. This is a great way to get things back. You know, spells that you want to put back into your hand and play them. It's always nice to get another Threats Undetected, Well of the Forgotten, or a Scales of Shale, if you've played them already. So it doesn't look like it's that great of a deck, but try it out. It works really well. Even if you don't pick up this Planeswalker, try it with a Grist. It's just, if you have these cards, it will help a lot. If you don't have every single card in here, say you don't have Selvala because you didn't go through PMA or Crest for the Necropolis, same thing. You could probably find some decent substitutes for it. Also, the proof is here in the gameplay. So if you like it, try it out. All right, let me show you the fun deck. All right, so this is a bit of a gimmick deck, but it's a really fun gimmick, and I almost guarantee you no one else is playing these 2 cards in combination with each other. So we got Grievous Wound, a card that you never see played, and Rhea Ivor, one that you probably don't see played that often, but maybe this will turn you around. So here's the way it works. So Rhea Ivor, when this creature attacks, your other creatures get +1/+0 for each of their reinforcements. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's Planeswalker, create X for X Might tokens. Your opponent gains X life. X is this creature's power. So in combination with Lacid Prowler, who has this Restore 2. So this is how this works. Lacid Prowler, you get into your graveyard. Well, if you can cast it or get it on the board first, that's great too, because you're going to be destroying your library. But the Restore 2, your first creature gets +Y/+Y. Y is the number of cards in your graveyard. So your first creature is going to be Rhea Ivor because it has Bravery and Vigilance. So it's going to be in the first slot. So when you pop one of those Restore gems from Lacid Prowler, you're going to buff up your Rhea Ivor. And that's going to be creating a ton of Might tokens. And then your opponent is going to gain X life. And this is actually a good thing because we're going to pair this with Grievous Wound, an enchantment aura. When your opponent gains life, your opponent loses X life. So you're already going to make them negate the life gain that happens from Rhea Ivor. X is equal to amount of life that player gained times 2. Then players can't gain life until end of turn. So not only did you negate it, but you actually double life lost equal to that gained life. So I've had it that I've bumped up my Rhea Ivor to like 75 or something from the Lacid Prowler, and then one-shotted my opponent by making the Grievous Wound lose their life by that much, like 140 or something like that. So it doesn't always work that well. The longer that you can keep the Rhea Ivor on the battlefield, the more devastating this combo becomes. And then even if you're not able to grab the Grievous Wound, eventually you'll have enough Might tokens to destroy your opponent as well. And I believe those Might tokens have unblockable, right? Yeah. It's really hard to make sure that your opponent, it's really hard for your opponent to block those. So they have to get rid of them or else they're in trouble. And then, you know, everything else in here is just kind of helping to make things happen for you. You got Chimil to find the right pieces, a bunch of other cards to help keep you safe, Mystical Teachings, and 3 of my favorite. So you really want to find a Mystical Teachings to get everything else moving in your deck. You can Mystical Teachings into Breach the Multiverse and put the Lacid Prowler and the Fanatic Aronis in your graveyard and then bring them out. So you're going to be creating a bunch of restore tokens, hopefully, by playing both of these cards here. So Fanatic of Ronus is great in this Grist too, because when this creature enters the battlefield, destroy the top 8 cards from your library. That's pretty good for an ETB effect. And this is just going to be providing more and more cards to fuel your third ability if you get to that point. So lots of fun things happening here. I hope you like the gameplay to see how this actually works in play. As with any combo like this, it does take a little bit of luck to get it going, but it's so fun. And, you know, I just love coming up with unique ways to win here. So I really enjoyed creating this deck. I was messing around with Rhea Ivor in a different thing, and then I was like, wait a sec. There's a way to take advantage of all this life that your opponent is gaining. Even if you don't have Grievous Wound, you can try playing with the Knight of Dusk Sorrow, I think it's called. The uncommon creature that makes it so that your opponent can't gain life. So if you don't have Grievous Wound, there are a couple other cards that you can play around with that will give you a similar effect. But Grievous Wound just makes it so that you win really quickly, and I really like it for that reason. So yeah, let's get to the grades then. All right, first things, max hit points, awful. The main thing holding this Planeswalker back from being a more viable one, so it gets a D. It's just a shame. I wish I could like this Planeswalker more, but it's decisions like this that make it hard for me to recommend to most people. Mana spread. This one's alright. You definitely can easily get into a disadvantage with not having enough other ways to get mana unless you match black or green gems. But fortunately, there are easy ways to make green matches, and if you do, you get a pretty good reward for it. So it gets a B. Ability 1, pretty average. It's really situational. You have to rely on having the right type of creature in your deck to take advantage of it. Fortunately, there are a lot of cool ones from the Tarkir Dragonstorm set that you can use, and there are a couple other cards here and there that you may want to destroy for the benefits. Something like a Suchi Cave Guard, for example. But yeah, other than that, it's a little bit niche, so I'm giving it a C. Ability 2, that's a little bit more universal utility because the support destruction is interesting, and sometimes you do want to destroy cards in your graveyard to make sure that you can put more creatures with restore into your grave too. So there's a little bit of synergy there. But again, it's just kind of slightly above average. So it's getting a C+ for me. Ability 3, I think this is this Planeswalker's bread and butter. So this is the one that I would most lean into building for if you were going to do that. It's pretty solid. It's not really necessarily race to it right away and reap the benefits from it. I would still say that you should build a little bit of graveyard destruction into your deck so that this third ability is ready and waiting for you to take advantage of it. But even so, I do really like it. And I think it's kind of this Planeswalker saving grace, to be honest. So giving it an A-. Versatility. Because a lot of her abilities are pretty vanilla, the only thing you want to do is really build for your graveyard and taking advantage of that. So other than that, I think the field is pretty wide open for you to do things. So she's got pretty good versatility. There are just a few little things you want to keep in mind that you probably want to build some gem conversion into this so that you're not stuck with bad matches in the beginning, even though, you know, you always can. I feel like always in this game, you're most vulnerable in the beginning of the match, where you're trying to set things up. You never know if your opponent is going to get just better luck than you. So that's something to keep in mind when you're building for your Planeswalkers. Just, not even just this one, just in general. But with that being said, I think her versatility is pretty alright. So getting a B+. Card utility, I don't think she brings a whole lot to the cards themselves. I think that cards that benefit from taking things out of the graveyard can do all right in this deck. I think Grist 1 is better at all that kind of stuff than this one, so she gets a little bit of a knock there just in comparison, but definitely not bad. I don't think that she needs specific cards to shine other than making sure that you have some lifelink in your deck just to stay alive. But I think overall she does all right with card utility, so giving her a B-, not a bad grade, but could be better. And then fun. You know, I did have a lot of fun building for her because I think her mana spread is pretty good. I think there are fun things you can do with her kit. Really, the main thing keeping her from being more fun is that damn max hit point being so low. That's just going to be a fact of life with her. So I have to knock her in the fun department in that regard. And then also she just feels like a worse version of the Grist that we all know and love. Love if you play her, hate if you don't. But you know, I still had a decent time playing with her, so she is one that I think I'll go back to here and there for non-serious things. So I do think that she is worth playing around with for a lot of people. And I'm going to give her a B in that regard. So what is going to be my final grade for her? Well, there are a few things to consider here. I think she has pretty decent upsides. It's just a few things just really hold her back. And plus she's always going to be in the shadow of the first Grist, who is undoubtedly a top 3 walker in the game at worst. And I would imagine a lot of people think that she is the best Planeswalker in the game. So that's too big of shoes to fill, or not even shoes to fill, but more just, you know, how do you shine when you have a much better option available to you? So I'm going to end up giving her a B-, just on the cusp. Like, it's pretty much right on the border of B- and C+. I wish I could like her more, but I just feel like there are a lot of things that they could do to set her apart from her predecessor. I feel like what her main goals to try to accomplish, that she just doesn't do them as well as the first Grist. So if you're choosing between the two, because you don't have either, the first one is a no-brainer. But we'll see how often that this one will be in the shop, because she's not a bad Planeswalker, but she just feels kind of unnecessary to me when there's one that's already so much better. But, you know, if you're getting sick of using the first Grist, if you're one of those type of people who just builds decks, sets them aside, uses them when you need to, but you still want to have other ways to mess around with similar Planeswalkers, this one's a pretty good option for that. I would say that this is a Planeswalker that's worth picking up for people who play with all the Planeswalkers, try to collect them all, and just are looking for more options. This one's alright, so I would pick it up for crystals in the holiday discount. I think that's a great place to pick her up if you're just kind of looking for something new and fun to play around with. So that is my recommendation for you if you are thinking about adding her to your collection. So I would say don't necessarily completely write her off because there is a better Grist out there, but don't think that this one is even close to as good as the other. So unfortunately, that is just the way that they designed her. There are definitely some things that I wish would have been better thought out, especially in comparison with the other one. So that is that for this one. I hope you enjoyed the review here. Make sure to hit that like button. Maybe subscribe if you enjoyed how I break things down here. I have tons of other types of videos, and consider becoming a member if you are a long-time subscriber to this channel, because I'm going to try and regularly add content there to make sure that you guys get your $3 worth. And again, as always, thank you to WebCore. I know I can't get to every single thing that they give us, but I'm happy to review the ones that I do. And I just want to make sure that I get to the most important things so that I can keep providing useful content to those of you who love this game like I do. All right. Till next time, have fun. And let me know if you picked this one up and tell me what you think. Do you like her? Not? Am I spot on? Or am I off base anywhere? Okay. Hope to see you in the comments.